Hello, my name is Reiko Takeda, and today I will give a presentation entitled How a Teacher Overcame Fears and Challenges of Emergency Remote Teaching. And in this presentation, I will show how I once felt insecure, but became a teacher rising to the occasion after the launch of emergency remote teaching this spring. I'll be using a lot of emoticons which show the different feelings I had throughout the term. We all know what happened this year. The spread of COVID-19 changed many things all over the world. For those in the Japanese university context, there was a sudden shift to remote teaching. And that meant universities were offering crash courses to teachers and faculty on learning management systems and apps for online meetings. Furthermore, universities required us to revise our syllabi based on our makeshift online courses. At both universities where I teach, the beginning of classes got pushed back to May. When all the changes were announced in April, where was I with my experience with online teaching? I've only taken one course on online in my master's program. Furthermore, my familiarity with LMSs, I would say at best 10%. I only used limited functions on the LMSs of each university. Basically, I felt like the blind leading the blind. When I started thinking of what this would involve, however, I remembered what was written in Benesch 2017 on emotion labor. Benesch defines the concept of emotion labor as, quote, the affect and intellect, body and work, passion and rationality, end quote, which are influenced by power relations. And in this case, the power relations are what universities have decided to do based on the spread of COVID-19. And my own emotion labor involved the projected uncertainty of the extra time required to prepare and teach online courses, which was overwhelming. My biggest fear was, will I make it? Will my students understand? Will my students be successful? But I didn't have time to dwell on my fears. And I decided to go the extra mile to make sure that my wording on the material I prepared was explicit to the students. And that meant I was going to spend extra time to make my wording clear instead of leaving my students feeling puzzled, making them spend time to figure out what I meant. There was no turning back. I had no choice. I just had to do it. There were 3 challenges I had to face when teaching my first year academic writing class. The first one is to guide the students through the writing process, which involves writing the rough draft, revising it, writing the second draft, and then completing the final version. The next challenge was to give feedback to my students' work on Word files. How much of the students' work was I going to correct? How much of my feedback were students going to incorporate in their revisions? And the third and biggest challenge was to have students peer edit each other's work Was this going to work? Were students going to give appropriate feedback to their classmates? In the following slides, I will describe these 3 challenges, elaborate on my feelings, and share the excerpts of my first-year students' writings, which inspired me and made me believe that, yeah, I was doing the right thing for my students. The first one was guiding my students through the writing process. My concern was, well, what if the students get frustrated when they go through a lengthy process just to finish one assignment? And here are some of my students' responses. And just to let you know, the majority of my students came from an academic background in high school where English education was valued. They wrote, I learned how important it is to have an outline. I learned how to write a logical sentences little by little. I think my writing became a lot more organized. I believe that I'm capable of expressing my thoughts and ideas more logically and academically. My second concern was giving feedback on Word files. And the reason I say this is because in my past face-to-face classes, I've had students turn in their revised versions without making the corrections based on my feedback. I don't know what their reason was, but nevertheless, I thought, well, what if the students don't understand my feedback? Well, what if the students don't understand what to do with my feedback? And here are the responses that I got from my students. Advice from Ms. Takeda helped me find my errors, and although the assignment seemed difficult and not achievable at first, continue writing got rid of my worries. I thought in this class I learned a lot, and I feel like it almost has no difference in the amount of learning that I might have had in the face-to-face lectures. Now, this second comment was especially encouraging, to be told that my online course felt like it was equivalent to a face-to-face course. Now, the third challenge was my biggest mental block, having students peer edit. Having students peer edit each other's work is something that I've done in my face-to-face classes, but I've never done this in an online class. Was this going to work? What if the students feel inhibited by having a classmate read their writing? To make sure that the peer editing was going to work, I was going to take risks, which were going to involve more emotion labor on my part, and that was to have students do the peer editing anonymously. In other words, I took the time to remove all personal information from the Word files before pairing up the students and sending the partners' files to each student. Now, contrary to my expectations, this was the challenge for which I received so much positive feedback. This was what the students had to say. My classmates gave me many hints for me to write coherent sentences. Peer editing helped me see my writing features objectively and also see how other people are writing their papers. By checking my classmates' paragraph, I was so amazed by the incredible paragraph they wrote and made me want to try even hard to write a good advanced paragraph. Now, looking back and looking ahead, after the spring term was over and when I read my students' work, I was so inspired that I felt my students deserved my extra time. And now, for the fall, preparations are underway, which now include more time-saving tools, such as real-time classes, and less pre-recorded video sessions. But I have to make sure that I am doing this for the right reason, and that is for ongoing quality teaching, which my students deserve. And on the bottom, you can find the reference that I cited from Benesch, 2017. Thank you for listening.